Thanks for tuning in at Brackeys.
Hello everyone and welcome to this video on creating a multiplayer FPS in Unity. Today we are going to be creating a reload system for our game. So whenever we run out of bullets, we will force a reload upon the user, and we'll probably also add a shortcut, which is probably going to be the R key for reloading immediately. So we'll have a max bullet count, we'll count down to 0, and then we'll have some kind of animation in there that plays while we are reloading that will be displayed on all clients. Pretty easy stuff to do, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's just delve right into it. So as you can see, I'm here in Unity, and what I want to begin with is just kind of sketch out the logic. So if we find the script that is responsible for shooting, which is our player shoot script, and double click that. And remember, this script sits on the player object itself and is enabled for all of our different clients. So this code will be called for all the clients. And in here you can see that we do some updating and we do some firing, and most importantly down here is the shoot method, where we check if we are the local player, and if we are, well then we want to go ahead and shoot. We want to fire out a raycast and do all of that stuff with damage and finding the player we've hit and all that stuff. So let's go ahead and add some more code onto this, and really what I want to begin with is having some kind of idea of how many bullets we have left. And so far, all information about our weapon is stored inside of the player weapon class. And this is handled by the weapon manager. So let's go ahead and just open up these two scripts. You can see our weapon manager takes care of switching between weapons, and currently we only have a primary weapon that we have enabled all the time. I've promised you guys to do weapon switching, and I definitely will. I'm just holding it back a tiny bit because I have some stuff that I want to do first, and because I want to have some cool models ready for you so you have something to switch between. But don't worry, I know that you guys want to see that, and I definitely want to do it as well, so it's on the roadmap. But for now, in here we have a primary weapon, and we have a reference to the weapon that we currently have equipped called our current weapon. And that weapon is basically just this data. So let's just go ahead and add some new data fields here. Let's make a public integer, which is going to be our max bullets. And this is just going to be defaulted to something like 20. And then we can have a hide in inspector here because we don't want to show this and make it editable in the inspector, which is our current amount of bullets. So we can just call this one bullets. And what I really want to do here is add onto this a constructor, so a class constructor that will set some variables whenever this class is instantiated. So we'll create a public player weapon here, and this is how we create a constructor. And this basically allows us to just set bullets equal to max bullets whenever this class is used. So that's awesome. And then we can go into our player shoot script here, and we can use the fact that we already have a reference to our current weapon. So we declare that up here. You can see we set our current weapon equal to the weapon manager.get current weapon. So we'll use this reference down here, and we'll simply say that if current weapon dot bullets is less than or equal to 0, meaning we've run out of bullets, well then we want to return out of this because we don't want to call all of the rest code or the remaining code. We can maybe do a debug.log statement here saying out of bullets. So, and this is where we'll probably force a reload. So this is where we'll call some method that will have sit on the weapon manager in order to reload the weapon. And what we'll also need to do is remember that whenever we shoot, we want to subtract our current bullet amount. So we'll say current weapon dot bullets minus minus. So we'll just want to subtract 1 each time we shoot. Cool. So this should actually work, and let's just add a bit of information here. Let's just do a debug.log up here stating the current amount of bullets we have right before shooting. So we could also do it down here as well, but let's just do it here for, actually, I want to do it after we just shot. So let's just do a debug.log saying remaining bullets, and then we'll do plus current weapon dot bullets. Awesome, so let's save that and let's try to see if this is working in Unity already. So let's hit play and host a game. And host a game, come on Unity, please don't freeze on me. So we can create a room here, and you can see that if I just switch into the console and do some shooting, you can see it says remaining bullets 19, 18, 17, and we just keep going until it hits 0, and now it says out of bullets. And I can't shoot anymore. Notice there's no shooting animation. Awesome. So what we really just need to do is add some functionality for actually now reloading the weapon and then re-enabling ourselves to shoot, because this is based on the current amount of bullets. We don't even need to do any kind of checking in here. We just need to know our amount of bullets, and when that's replenished, we can begin shooting again. So inside of our weapon manager, let's add a new function. And this is just going to be a public void reload. And instead, it's not going to take in any arguments. And what we want to do here is basically keep track of whether or not we are already reloading, because we only want to call this once, and we only want to do a reload once. We don't want him to replay his animation and things will look weird, or restart the reload in the middle of another reload and stuff like that. We just want to go through a full reload, and that's it. And this way, we do that easily by just adding a private pool up here called isReloading, and setting that to false by default. And then in here, we just say if we are already reloading, so if is reloading, we just return. And in case we are not, we can go ahead and do a bunch of code. What I want to do is just set is reloading equal to true. And when we're done doing all of our code, we'll set it back to false. And you might think, isn't this kind of dumb to do, because it's going to execute this function really quickly, and there's not going to be any code running in between these two things. And you're totally right about that, except we are going to just in a moment move this code into a coroutine or an iEnumerator, as we refer to them inside of Unity, but they're still coroutines. And we're going to be delaying this code. So we're going to be setting up a wait for seconds call that is going to wait exactly, let's say, 1 second until is reloading is done, and will be set to false. And that is why we have to keep track of where we are in terms of the reload stage. So we set is reloading to true. And then we can just go current weapon dot bullets equals current weapon, not current graphics, Jesus Christ, current weapon dot max bullets. There we go. And now we've reset our amount of bullets, and we should be able to shoot again. And again, right now this is an immediate effect, but we should be able to see this working already inside of Unity. It's just going to skip a single frame, and then it's going to reload. However, it won't do that until we actually call the function. So inside of our player shoot, instead of saying out of bullets, we're just going to go in here and say weapon manager dot reload. Awesome. And now all we really need to do is maybe notify ourselves that this is happening. So let's just go in here and throw a debug.log statement saying debug.log reloading. And let's just do 2 dots here because it's something we're waiting to finish. So let's hit play now and host a game. And let's go through this, and you can see it says remaining bullets and all that. And when we reach 0, and then click, it's going to say reloading ... and we can now shoot again. And if I just hold down the trigger here, you can see that it very quickly reloads. You might not even be able to notice it on the camera. The reloading is almost instantaneous. So what we'll do here is, of course, add some kind of delay to this. And that's why we'll use a coroutine. So let's go up here. Let's say using system.collections, which we need to do every time we want to use a coroutine. Then we go down here and we create a private iEnumerator, and we call this one reload coroutine. We need to distinguish between this reload and the private one here. You can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to tell myself this is a coroutine and we need to use it that way. You can do whatever you want with the naming here. And yeah, everything else is good. So now we just need to move all of this code here inside of the coroutine. So reload coroutine here, it's going to say reloading, and it's going to set this. And then before we change the amount of bullets we want to wait. So we're going to do a yield return new wait for seconds. And the amount of seconds we could set to something fixed, say 1 second, or we could have it be dependent on the weapon. So some weapons might reload really fast, such as a pistol, where you just swap out the magazine. or some weapons might take a while, say a light machine gun, where you need to do all kinds of reloading action. So what we'll do is we'll go inside of our player weapon and we'll add this as another field. So let's just create and actually I want it here. Let's just create a public float, which is going to be our reload time, and it's going to say, let's just set it at 1 by default, and let's put that in here. So now we just go current weapon dot reload time. Cool. So this should actually already work for the delay. All we need to do now is call this coroutine. So we go start coroutine, and we put in the reload coroutine, and remember this is a function, so we need the parentheses. So now let's save this, and we should again see this working inside of Unity. So let's hit play now. Let's create a new roam, test, and we should see if I just hold down my mouse now that it actually does a 1 second pause before continuing each time it reloads. Cool, but we don't currently have any kind of visual representation of what is going on. And since we haven't added any sound to the game, it can be kind of hard to notice. So what we'll do is create right now just a simple animation, but you can be as advanced with this as you want to, and have this be called on all of our different clients. So we want to call it on the local one, which we're doing right now with this function here. This is only called on the local player. And then we'll have it be called on all of the other clients as well, where we do this kind of reload animation. So let's begin by creating the animation, and let's then move on to actually calling it in here. So in order to create this animation, let's set up a simple little system here. So let's go into our main level 1, and let's take our prefabs and find our players out here. So let's drag our player in here, and that should switch up our camera here. Let's find our camera, our weapon holder, and let's set our sci-fi automatic as a child object of that. So now let's focus on this, and let's reset the transform component. So now we can see that this is set to 0, 0, 0 and 0, 0, 0 on both the position and the rotation. And the weapon holder here is offset in some kind of way that enable us to do that. So now we can select our sci-fi automatic, and we can add a simple little animation to this. So let's go under animation, and let's hit, and you can see right now that this is actually relative to not our sci-fi automatic, but to another animation component that we have in here. And you can see, we might be able to see my cat kind of going crazy with some wires here on the desk. So I'm just gonna put him down on the ground. So you can see that this is currently using our animator that sits on the player himself. So let's go under a sci-fi automatic, and let's create a separate animator here. So let's go animator, create one there. Let's also create a animator controller. So we'll have to go in here, and I've already created a folder here called animation and one called weapons. Under that, you can just go ahead and create those folders by right-clicking create folder. And let's create now an animator controller here. And this is just going to be, well, for now we can call it our sci-fi automatic, but we might just have the or use the same animations for all of our different weapons. We'll see. It depends on what weapons we decide to add. Some weapons might be really similar, and some might need separate animation. But for now, let's just call it the sci-fi automatic. And you can see now that if we reference this here, drag in our sci-fi automatic there, you can see that we can create some new animations. To begin animating sci-fi automatic, create an animation clip. So we're going to do that. So let's hit create, and let's go under animation, weapons, and let's call this one the idle animation. And of course, we'll have to create some kind of idle. And this can be really, really simple. You can just leave it in here, just add some keyframes for the position, just like this. And you might want to add some for the rotation as well. There you go. And you can just delete these. So we only have our base keyframe. So our position is at 0 and our rotation is at 0. And you can definitely just leave that in here. But what I kind of wanted to try is just animating this idle a tiny, tiny bit. So let's just try moving forwards. Let's say a pretty big amount. Let's say 1.5, and then dragging it up a tiny bit to something like 0.05 is going to be fine, I think. and then going back to the animation or to the keyframe that we had before. So let's put that at 4. Let's right click, or not at 4, at 3. I've messed something up here. So actually let's put this at 2 and this at 4. Let's try that. Let's right click and hit flat. And let's try and play this. So that might be a bit too slow, or it might be really nice. It depends on your game. It just adds this kind of subtle breathing. And you might be thinking, well, we're playing as a robot. Does he really need to breathe? And no, he does definitely not. You can just leave this out. I just wanted to try it in here. So now let's hit create new clip and create a reload animation as well. So let's call this one reload. And this of course needs to be a bit fancier. And when I say fancy, I mean ridiculously simple. But you can create these animations inside of Blender or Maya or 3ds Max, and you can import them in here. Or you could export your gun to be sort of modular, split into parts, and really do a nice animation inside of Unity. That's totally up to you. I'm just going to do something really simple here for the sake of the video. And then at a later point, again, I want to show you some really cool weapons that you can add to your game. So for now, let's just take this here and let's move it down. And I actually want to move it down quite a bit. And let's also tilt it forwards. Let's tilt it kind of to the side. Something like that. Something that very clearly says this weapon is currently not able to be used. Just kind of moving it out of the frame. And you notice that this looks super weird, and that's because we're currently only viewing this from our default camera, this camera right here. But what we have is a weapon camera that when we're in the game displays the weapon with another kind of FOV, and which is positioned a bit differently, so things are going to look much nicer. But I actually think that is kind of all we need to do for a reload animation. So let's go to reload here, and what I want to do is not actually include the transition here. I just want to remove the original keyframes and just move these to the very start of the animation. And then we'll have the blending between the two animations occur from Unity's automatic blending in the mechanism system. So this is kind of just two different states that we're blending between, and we don't have any kind of animation in here. So one thing that I might want to do, of course, is just maybe make this 1 second long. So we'll just add the same keyframes here, and we have this static thing going on. And we can always change this if it doesn't look good. So now that we have these two animations, I just want to go and take our sci-fi automatic, move it away from our player, and hit apply because we've added some new components here. Let's now delete it, and let's also delete our player. What we'll then do is go into our animator and double click on our sci-fi automatic. And you can see that currently our idle animation will play by default. That's totally fine. And then we want to go and make a transition from that onto our reload, and let's also make a transition back again. And then now the cat is joining in. There we go. So I'm turning into an old cat lady here. It's not too good. I think pretty much all my videos have a cat in them lately. So so we'll want to transition to our reload animation whenever we're reloading. And in order to do this, let's add a parameter up here and let's do a trigger. So this is just an ability to, or this is a parameter that you can edit inside of Unity. You can just say set trigger and then the name of the parameter, and that means that the animation will play instantly and that the trigger here, unlike a boolean, will be set back as soon as the animation has started. Then we can also go up here, and actually that's the only parameter we need. So then we can find our animation from the idle to the reload, and we can add a new condition, which is going to be, you can see here, the reload. So once that's triggered, it's going to switch from the idle to the reload. And we don't want this to have any exit time. We want to be able to do this immediately. Then on our way back, we don't want any conditions. So if nothing has changed, we just want to play the reload animation and then transition back to the idle. So what we can do then is animate this inside of our script. So we just have to trigger these animations now. All we need to edit is this parameter. But let's just see if this is working inside of the game first. So let's find our lobby. And let's hit play, and let's create some kind of game in here. And what I'll do is just hit escape here, and you can see that our idle animation is currently playing. and I actually really like it in here. It just adds a tiny bit of animation feel to the player, making everything look a bit less static. But I mean, some games prefer just having the weapons really fixed. Counter-Strike is an example of a game which has almost no weapon sway. It has a bit of weapon sway, but mostly when you're walking. So yeah, and you can of course add different animations here. You can add a walk animation if that's something you wanted to do using the exact same system. Now I've opened up a world of possibilities for you, hopefully, and you can just go crazy with this kind of stuff. So yeah, what I want to do is just select our player, select our camera, our weapon holder, and our sci-fi automatic, and we can now see in here our animator. And if we switch this over to fill the inspector instead and move things over, if I now hit reload, it's going to play that animation, and we can go into our game view and see what that looks like. So a very simple reload animation here, but it just works. So that's really cool. So let's now do this through a script instead of manually through the editor. So all we need to do is go into our Visual Studio, into our Weapon Manager script, and we need to actually call this on not only the local client, but on all clients. And so we need to go through first a command, which is called on the server. The server will then call an RPC on all of the different clients. So we'll have a command here, which is going to be a command or a void command reload. Let's call this on reload, so we can have all kinds of different stuff happening here whenever we're reloading, because this is not actually taking care of any reloading. We do that locally. We just want stuff mainly with graphics to happen when we reload. And we just want to call an RPC here. So let's do RPC on reload, call that, and then we mark this here as a client RPC. Let's do a void RPC on reload. There we go, and then we can add some functionality in here. We also want to make sure to call this, so this is going to happen right after we begin reloading. And yeah, so in here what we can then do is get the animator component, which sits on our current graphics object. And the current graphics is the weapon object with all of our graphics. So we do current graphics.get component of type animator, and we might want to check if this is null. So let's store it in a temporary variable, our animator here. Let's store this in something called anim. And let's just say that if anim is not equal to null, well, then we want to play some animation. So let's do anim.setTrigger, and the trigger will be called it reload. So that should handle everything for us, and we should basically now be able to test this in the game. So let's just begin by testing this on the local client here, and then let's do a build right after if things are working to test it on the other clients as well. So let's hit create room here. Let's hold down the trigger, and once we reach 0, it's going to reload and it's going to pop back in. Awesome, that is working so smoothly. Let's also, just before we test this on other clients by making a build, let's also add the ability to force a reload. So let's just go into our player shoot here, and we can maybe add this into our update here, so you can see we don't want to be able to do this if we're paused, and if we're not, well, that is true and that is true. So we can maybe just add this before the actual shooting takes place. I think that should be fine. Let's just do that. So we're just going to go in here and say if if input.get key down. And the key that we want to check for here is keycode.r. And we can just say reload. So we can do current weapon dot not current weapon, weapon manager dot reload. And one thing you might want to do here is just set the bullets equal to 0 temporarily, because now we're reloading, and in case the player is shooting, we don't want that to go through. You could also expose the variable here. This is reloading. We could just make this public, and that would allow us to use that variable instead, which is probably more stable. So let's just go in here and say, well, we want to reload here, and then we want to return, and we only want to shoot in case we're not reloading. So we're just going to go in here and say, if we're not the local player and we're not reloading, so and weapon manager dot is reloading is false. There we go. So that should make sure that we don't shoot when we force a reload. And everything else seems pretty good. One thing we can do in here is maybe just check if our magazine is already full, because if it is, it's kind of weird to do a reload anyway. So let's just say, if we get this key down, actually let's wrap this in a separate if statement. So let's say if current weapon dot bullets are less than our current weapon dot max bullets. So if we have shot and use some bullets in some way, then we want to be able to call this stuff in here. Awesome. And instead of using input.get key down key code R, we could use the default or the built-in Unity input system. So let's go project settings, input, and let's see what we have here. If there's already a reload in here, there might be. That's actually not. But that's fine. We can make one ourselves. So let's just duplicate this array element. And instead of fire now, it's going to be reload, and it's going to take in as a positive button. It's going to take in, actually this is currently set up to use. This is actually fine. I believe this is all fine. Good. Isn't it? I think it is. Yeah, this is fine. So our positive button here is going to be the R button. And I believe you can just do that. And let's figure out if you can. I always get confused with Unity's input system. Let's say now input dot get button down, and then we use the reload button. And that should do the trick. So now we can close that down. Let's go in here and hit play. Let's create a new room, test. And nothing should happen now when I press R. If I fire a bullet and press R, it reloads and it's back up. Awesome. So one thing that you might want to do is display this on the UI in some way. I'll go ahead and hit build here while I'm talking. And we'll definitely, I hope at least, to do that in a video to come. If it's something that you really want to see, let me know and I'll prioritize it. I also want to display our health at some point. So it could be a good kind of video to do some UI work, displaying the health and displaying the bullets, and maybe also some cues as to which buttons does what. Yeah, I think it would be good to work a bit on the UI. So let's now host a game here. Let's hit play. Let's again just call this test. Let's join it over here. And of course, this is going to take a few seconds, but that is fine because I believe that this is going to work. So now you can see if I jump down here and hit reload, it just reloads and it works on all of the different clients. It works as well if I run out of bullets. And we can see the same thing happening here, except that is kind of hard to see. So let's just move over Unity here and let's run them in parallel. And we'll have to focus in on the guy there. And you can see now that when I reload, it works there as well. Awesome. So that was pretty much all that I wanted to show for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you want to see some UI work next. And if you want to see some weapon switching, I definitely want to do it. So thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video. Thanks to all of the awesome Patreon supporters who donated in October, and a special thanks to Sultan El-Shadif, Faisal Marifai, and James Calhoun. Become a supporter at patreon.com/Brackeys.